It started with small things, subtle glances, quiet sighs, and unspoken disappointment that lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. At first, I didn't understand it. I thought maybe they were just having a bad day, or maybe I had done something wrong without realizing it. But over time, the warmth that once lived in their eyes began to fade. Conversations that used to last for hours turned into awkward silences, and every word I spoke seemed to echo against walls that no longer wanted to hear me. I would walk into a room and feel the shift in energy, the unspoken message that I didn't belong there anymore. The laughter that used to fill the house now felt like it belonged to someone else's story, not mine. They began to exclude me from things that once made us a family, small dinners, family plans, even simple moments of togetherness. I watched from the sidelines as they celebrated milestones I wasn't invited to share. It hurt more than I could ever put into words because rejection from strangers is one thing, but rejection from the people who raised you, who are supposed to love you unconditionally, cuts in a way that leaves scars deeper than any wound. I tried to fix it, to earn back their affection, to be someone they could be proud of. I bent myself into shapes that weren't me, hoping that maybe if I changed, they would love me again. But the more I tried, the further they drifted. I remember standing in front of the mirror one night, asking myself what I had done to deserve it. I searched for reasons. Maybe I wasn't good enough, maybe I had failed too many times, maybe I just wasn't what they wanted me to be. The hardest part wasn't losing their love, it was realizing that maybe I never really had it the way I thought I did. It's a painful truth, one that shatters the illusion of family being a safe place. You start to see the cracks in the foundation, the hidden favoritism, the quiet judgments, and the unspoken expectations that you were never meant to meet. There were days when I would sit in my room, hearing them laugh in the next room, and wonder what it would take for them to see me again, not as a disappointment but as someone who belonged. I'd scroll through old photos, birthdays, holidays, family trips, and feel the distance grow wider between who we were and who we had become. Every picture told a story of togetherness that no longer existed. They stopped asking how I was doing, stopped noticing when I wasn't around. My presence became invisible, like a shadow that existed in the background of their lives. Over time, I learned how to mask the pain. I smiled when they ignored me, pretended I was okay when my heart was breaking. I told myself that I didn't need their approval, but deep down, I still craved it. It's strange how love can turn into something that hurts you the most. I used to believe that family would always stand by you, that no matter what mistakes you made, they'd be there to guide you back. But when the people you count on the most make you feel like a burden, something inside you starts to die slowly. The rejection wasn't loud or dramatic. It came quietly, in the form of forgotten invitations, unanswered messages, and cold stares that said more than words ever could. I stopped trying to explain myself because explanations fell on deaf ears. I stopped expecting apologies because I realized they didn't see their actions. I tried to remind myself of the good times, to hold on to memories where we felt like a family, but even those memories began to feel tainted. The more I thought about them, the more I realized how fragile love can be when it's based on conditions. I used to dream of a day when they would see me for who I really am, not for who they wanted me to be. But dreams like that don't survive long when reality keeps reminding you that some bonds are not unbreakable, they're just easily forgotten when you no longer serve their expectations. Every rejection made me colder, stronger in ways I didn't want to be. I stopped waiting for them to care, stopped hoping for the validation that never came. I started building my own world, one where I didn't need their approval to exist. But even as I tried to move on, a part of me still carried the ache of their absence. The sound of their laughter still haunted me at night, not because I missed them, but because it reminded me of what I lost. It reminded me that love can vanish without warning, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who break you the most. There's a certain silence that follows rejection, a silence so deep it becomes a language of its own. You learn to hear what isn't said, to read meaning in every glance, every pause, every sigh. You begin to understand that not everyone who shares your blood shares your heart. And in that understanding, something inside you changes forever. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, it whispers in the quiet moments when you're alone, reminding you that you're invisible to the people who should see you the most. The pain of being unseen by your own family isn't just emotional, it seeps into your identity, into the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you breathe. It makes you question your worth, your purpose, your very place in the world. When you're surrounded by people who claim to love you, yet act as if you don't exist, it's like standing. There's something cruel about being unseen by the people who raised you, who once held your hand and called you theirs. It's not that they hate you, it's that they stop seeing you as someone worthy of attention. They begin to overlook your efforts, dismiss your struggles, and ignore your victories. Every little thing you do to earn a smile or a word of appreciation gets brushed aside like it never happened. You start to shrink, little by little, until you feel too small to matter. The laughter around the table no longer includes you, and the space you used to fill feels occupied by their indifference. You tell yourself it's okay, that you don't need their validation, but deep down, it breaks something inside you each time they look past you. The pain of being unseen teaches you to hide your emotions behind practiced smiles. You learn to wear masks so no one sees how much it hurts. You pretend that the silence doesn't bother you, that their coldness doesn't sting, but your heart knows the truth. Every ignored word, every forgotten moment, every time they chose someone else over you, it all adds up. You begin to feel like you're shouting into an endless void, hoping someone will hear, hoping someone will care. But no one does. You start losing the sound of your own voice, because what's the point of speaking when no one's listening? You begin to notice how they light up when someone else enters the room, how their tone softens, how their laughter flows freely. And you wonder what makes that person more deserving of their love than you. You think maybe if you were different, smarter, prettier, more successful, they'd see you again. You start chasing their attention like a starving soul searching for crumbs of affection. But the harder you try, the more invisible you become. It's almost as if your efforts remind them of why they turned away in the first place. The rejection becomes a cycle, one you can't seem to break, no matter how much you give. At night, when everything is quiet, that's when the loneliness screams the loudest. You replay every moment in your mind, every time you tried to reach out, every time they looked through you like you weren't there. You remember the way your voice would tremble when you tried to speak your truth, and how they would change the subject like your feelings were too inconvenient to acknowledge. You start to understand that some people don't reject you because of who you are, they reject you because you remind them of something they don't want to face. Maybe your strength threatens their pride, or your vulnerability exposes their guilt. Whatever the reason, you're left standing in the ruins of a connection that once meant everything to you. Being unseen by your family teaches you resilience in a brutal way. You learn to find comfort in solitude, to build your own sense of worth without their approval. You start to rely on yourself for validation, but it doesn't happen overnight. There are nights filled with tears, days filled with pretending, and moments where you almost believe you deserve the silence. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice keeps whispering that you do matter, even if they can't see it. That quiet voice becomes your lifeline, the thing that keeps you from disappearing completely. You begin to observe the world differently. You notice the people who listen, the ones who make you feel seen without trying. You start cherishing genuine moments of connection, no matter how small. Slowly, the pain that once made you feel powerless begins to turn into strength. You realize that being unseen by them doesn't mean you're invisible, it means they've chosen blindness. It's not about your worth, it's about their inability to recognize it. But even knowing that doesn't erase the ache of wanting to be seen, wanting to be loved without having to prove your value. You carry that ache with you everywhere, learning to hide it behind strength and composure. You become the kind of person who notices others' silence because you've lived through it. You recognize the pain in someone else's eyes because you've seen it in your own reflection. You start to understand that being unseen by your family doesn't mean the end, it just marks the beginning of learning to see yourself. And that lesson, though born from pain, becomes the quiet fire that fuels you to never let anyone make you feel invisible again. The journey of self-worth doesn't begin with confidence, it begins with pain. It starts in the moments when you realize that no one is coming to save you, that no one is going to validate the goodness inside you, and that the love you've been begging for might never come from the people you thought would give it unconditionally. At first, that realization crushes you. It feels like a collapse from within, like the foundation you built your entire identity on suddenly turned to dust. You start to see how much of yourself you've spent trying to please others, especially those who never truly saw you. Every choice you made, every dream you chased, every smile you forced was secretly a plea for approval. But when that approval never comes, you're left standing in the silence, face to face with the only person who can truly define your worth, yourself. It's not an easy road. In the beginning, the silence feels unbearable. You question who you are without their validation. You start to peel away the layers of yourself that were built around their opinions, and what you find beneath is fragile, unsure, and scared. You've spent so long being told you weren't enough that you start to believe it. You look in the mirror and see every flaw they pointed out, every failure they reminded you of. But slowly, something changes. You begin to realize that maybe their rejection wasn't a reflection of your inadequacy, it was a reflection of their inability to. That whisper becomes your motivation. You start to do things for yourself, not to impress them, not to prove them wrong, but to feel alive again. You rediscover small joys, music that makes you feel something, writing that helps you release the emotions you kept locked inside, moments of peace that remind you that life still has beauty even after betrayal. You begin to take pride in your own progress, even if no one else notices. The world may still be quiet, but for the first time, that quiet starts to feel like freedom instead of punishment. You realize that solitude can be empowering when it's no longer forced upon you. There are days when doubt returns, when you hear their voices in your mind telling you you'll never be enough. Those voices don't disappear overnight. They linger like ghosts, trying to pull you back into the darkness of dependency. But this time, you fight differently. You've learned that strength isn't always loud, sometimes it's just refusing to give up on yourself one more time. You start setting boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop apologizing for existing, for taking up space, for being different. The more you stand up for yourself, the more you begin to feel a sense of control that was once stolen from you. The journey of self-worth is messy. It's filled with contradictions. You can feel proud of your growth and still grieve the love you lost. You can feel strong and still cry at night. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. It comes in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent, but always pushing you toward becoming someone more whole. You start to see that your worth was never tied to their acceptance. It was there all along, buried beneath the weight of trying to be what they wanted. You just needed the silence, the rejection, the solitude to uncover it. As you move forward, you begin to attract different kinds of people, those who see you, who listen, who don't need you to prove your value. They remind you that genuine connection doesn't demand perfection. These new connections help heal the parts of you that were once too afraid to open up again. But the biggest change isn't in how others treat you, it's in how you treat yourself. You start speaking to yourself with the kindness you once begged to hear from others. You celebrate your small victories, forgive your mistakes, and honor your emotions. You stop needing external applause because you've finally learned to clap for yourself. There's a quiet power in realizing that your self-worth doesn't depend on anyone's opinion. It gives you a kind of peace that can't be shaken by rejection or betrayal. You no longer chase love that feels conditional, you no longer beg to be seen by those who choose blindness. Instead, you pour your energy into building a life that reflects who you truly are. You start setting goals not to prove your family wrong, but to prove yourself right. You build dreams that belong solely to you, dreams that don't require anyone else's approval to matter. You begin to understand that true revenge isn't about making them regret what they did, it's about becoming someone who no longer needs their validation at all. Every success, every moment of happiness, every time you choose yourself over their opinions becomes a silent victory. You no longer live in reaction to their rejection, you live in response to your own rediscovered worth. You realize that the greatest power you can have is to rise above the pain they caused and use it as fuel for your own transformation. The journey of self-worth doesn't end with perfection, it ends with peace. Peace in knowing that you are enough, even when no one tells you so. Peace in knowing that your existence has value, even if others fail to recognize it. Peace in knowing that being rejected by them was never the end of your story, it was the beginning of finding yourself. And in that quiet realization, the same heart that once broke under the weight of rejection begins to beat with purpose again, stronger and freer than it has ever been. There comes a time when the pain that once held you down turns into the fire that lifts you higher. The rise from the shadows doesn't happen in a single moment, it happens quietly, in the small decisions you make every day to keep moving forward when it would be easier to give up. It begins when you stop waiting for them to notice your worth and start creating a life that speaks for itself. You stop trying to explain your pain, stop seeking closure from people who would never understand, and instead pour all that energy into becoming someone you can finally be proud of. You start with nothing but broken pieces, yet somehow, you begin to rebuild. Slowly, piece by piece, you craft a version of yourself that doesn't need their validation to shine. At first, the process feels lonely. You look around and realize that the people you once depended on aren't there anymore. But instead of seeing emptiness, you start to see opportunity, the chance to redefine who you are on your own terms. You begin to wake up with a sense of purpose, even if it's small. You take the pain they caused and channel it into something productive. You start learning new things, working harder, pushing yourself in ways you never thought possible. Every failure becomes fuel, every setback a lesson. You realize that your strength isn't in avoiding pain, but in facing it head-on and refusing to let it define you. You start to see results, not overnight, but gradually. The same people who once doubted. The rise from the shadows also means confronting the darker parts of yourself, the anger, the bitterness, the need for revenge. Those emotions don't disappear easily. They live within you, whispering that you owe them payback, that they should feel the same pain they made you feel. But as you grow, you begin to see that true power isn't about making them suffer, it's about becoming untouchable. You don't want to be their revenge story, you want to be their reminder of what they lost. The more you focus on your growth, the less room you have for hatred. Your success becomes your answer, your silence becomes your statement, and your peace becomes your victory. There are moments of doubt, moments when you question if you're really healing or just pretending. Some nights, the old wounds reopen, and memories flood back like waves trying to pull you under. But this time, you don't drown. You've learned how to swim through the pain, how to breathe in moments that once suffocated you. You remind yourself how far you've come, how much strength it took to get here. You start recognizing your resilience not as a survival tactic but as a part of who you are now. The shadows no longer scare you because you've learned how to create your own light. The transformation doesn't just happen on the outside. It starts showing in your posture, your voice, your choices. You no longer seek validation in empty words or shallow praise. You move with quiet confidence, grounded in the knowledge that you've earned every bit of your progress. You begin to set goals that are bigger than proving anyone wrong. You start dreaming beyond the pain, beyond the story they wrote for you. And with every step, you feel lighter, not because the past has disappeared, but because you've stopped carrying its weight like a burden. You begin to attract new energy, new people who see your worth without needing to be convinced. They respect your journey because they can sense the battles you've fought in silence. They don't see your scars as weaknesses but as proof of your strength. You find yourself surrounded by people who value you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. It feels unfamiliar at first, to be accepted without condition, but you start to embrace it. You start to believe that you deserve genuine care, that you are worthy of love that doesn't demand pieces of yourself in return. As your life changes, so does your perspective. You start to look back at your past not with pain, but with understanding. The moments that once shattered you now make sense in ways they never did before. You realize that without their rejection, you might never have found your purpose. Without their silence, you might never have learned to listen to your own voice. The shadows they left you in became the place where you discovered your strength. You no longer see yourself as a victim of their actions, you see yourself as the result of your own resilience. Your rise doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't even need their recognition. It's a quiet, steady growth that speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. You no longer chase the things that once consumed you because you've outgrown them. You move through life with a sense of calm that comes only from knowing that you've faced your worst and survived. You start giving yourself credit for every battle you fought alone, every night you didn't give up, every time you chose growth over bitterness. The shadows that once threatened to bury you have become the backdrop against which your light now shines brighter. And as you rise, you start to notice something unexpected. They begin to change too. The ones who rejected you, who dismissed you, who doubted you, now watch from afar, realizing what they lost. But you don't feel the need to prove anything anymore. You've already proven it, to yourself. You've already won in the quietest, most powerful way possible. The rise from the shadows isn't about revenge, it's about rediscovering the power that was always within you, hidden beneath the pain, waiting for the moment you'd finally believe you were enough all along. It always happens when you least expect it, the moment of realization, the point when life circles back and those who once turned their backs suddenly remember your name. For years, they looked past you, dismissed your efforts, and made you feel like nothing you did would ever be good enough. But time has a way of shifting the ground beneath people, revealing truths they once chose to ignore. One day, you wake up and notice the difference in how they look at you, the hesitation in their voices, the way their pride softens into something that almost resembles regret. It's not that they suddenly love you more, it's that they finally see the value they once overlooked. They start to remember your worth not because they've changed, but because now they need you in ways they never imagined they would. The same family that once whispered behind your back, questioning your choices and mocking your failures, now calls your name with politeness dripping in every syllable. Their tone changes, their words carefully chosen, as if trying to erase the years of neglect with shallow kindness. You can feel the difference, their approach isn't out of love but out of necessity. Life has humbled them in ways pride once prevented. The people who once dismissed your pain now face their own struggles, and suddenly, the very person they cast out becomes the one holding what they lack. They need your help, your presence, your stability, and it's strange, almost surreal, to witness their shift. You remember every moment of rejection, every time you reached out and they pulled away. The memories don't fade just because they've changed their tone. You can still feel the sting of their absence during the hardest days of your life. You remember the way they made you feel small, the way they made you question your worth. But now, as they stand before you with hesitant smiles and fragile apologies, something inside you feels different. The hurt is still there, but it doesn't control you anymore. The power that once belonged to them now rests in your hands, not because you sought revenge, but because time revealed the truth of who you really were all along. They start asking about your life with forced interest, pretending to have always cared. They speak of family unity, of forgiveness, of how things were never that serious. You listen quietly, observing how they weave their guilt into excuses. They talk about misunderstanding, about how everyone makes mistakes, hoping those words can rewrite the past. But you've grown too much to be fooled by empty gestures. You see through the layers of their regret. You recognize the pattern, the way people come back not because they've changed, but because they realize they can no longer ignore the strength of the person they left behind. The moment of realization isn't just theirs, it's yours too. It's when you understand that you no longer need their acceptance to feel complete. You once begged for their acknowledgement, but now, it feels unnecessary. Their opinion holds no weight in the world you built from the ashes they left you in. You no longer crave their validation, instead, you feel a quiet sense of pride knowing you rose without it. You start to see how much you've grown, how their rejection became your motivation, how your solitude turned into your sanctuary. You see yourself not as the victim of their choices but as the author of your own transformation. As they come closer, trying to re-enter your life, you feel the tug between forgiveness and caution. A part of you wants to open the door, to believe that people can change, while another part remembers how it felt to be left outside in the cold. You start weighing your emotions carefully. You understand that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and kindness doesn't mean weakness. You can offer compassion without surrendering your peace. You can let them back in without letting them hurt you again. The power lies in your control now, and for the first time, you realize that you get to decide who stays in your life, not out of desperation, but out of choice. They begin to compliment you, telling stories about how proud they are, as if rewriting the past could undo the damage. You smile politely, not out of arrogance but out of understanding. You know that their praise now comes from recognition, not love. They see the life you built, the strength you carry, the calm confidence they once mistook for weakness. And in their eyes, there's a flicker of something, shame, maybe even admiration. You don't need to say much, your existence says enough. Every success, every peaceful moment, every step you took on your own becomes a silent reminder of what they failed to see when it mattered most. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing that life brought them full circle. The ones who pushed you away now reach for the hand they once refused to hold. The irony doesn't make you bitter, it makes you aware. You realize that time doesn't just reveal people, it exposes everything: loyalty, intention, love, and truth. And now that truth stands between you and them, unspoken but undeniable. You no longer need to shout or prove anything because your growth speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. You've become living proof of what happens when rejection meets resilience. Even as they express regret, you can tell their remorse isn't purely emotional, it's born out of consequence. They need you because the balance has shifted. Where once you were the one searching for belonging, now they are the ones reaching out for acceptance. You can sense their discomfort, their unspoken realization that the person they underestimated became the person they can't ignore. It's a strange kind of justice, not the loud, vengeful kind, but the silent, poetic kind that settles deep in your chest. The moment of realization changes everything. It's not about triumph or revenge, it's about clarity. You finally see things as they are, not through the fog of hope or the haze of hurt. You understand that sometimes life forces people to recognize what they took for granted, and in that recognition lies your redemption. You stand where you once fell, surrounded by the same faces that once turned away, but this time, the power is yours. Not because you won, but because you found peace in knowing you no longer need their acceptance to define your worth. There is a kind of revenge that doesn't come from anger, but from peace. The power of calm revenge is not in loud victories or grand displays, it's in silence, in composure, in the way you rise above everything that was meant to break you. It's in the moment when you no longer need to explain yourself, no longer crave an apology, no longer feel the weight of proving your worth. You simply exist as proof of what they lost, and that quiet truth becomes louder than any act of vengeance could ever be. The calm after the storm becomes your weapon, and your success becomes the reflection they cannot escape. When you've been hurt deeply, the first instinct is always to fight back, to show them they were wrong, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain they caused you. But with time, you learn that real power isn't found in their recognition of your pain, it's found in your ability to heal from it. You stop trying to control their perception of you. You stop wasting your energy on explanations that will never change their understanding. Instead, you redirect all that energy into building a life that speaks for itself. The very things they thought would destroy you become the foundation of your strength. The power of calm revenge comes from restraint. It's the quiet decision not to respond to their provocations, not to remind them of what they did, not to lower yourself to their level. It's the stillness that comes when you realize that their actions no longer have the power to define you. You don't need to humiliate them or seek validation through confrontation. Every time you choose silence over chaos, every time you choose grace over bitterness, you reclaim a piece of yourself that they once tried to take. They expect anger, they expect retaliation, but instead, they're met with calm. And that calm unsettles them more than any words ever could. It's strange how peace can become the sharpest form of revenge. The same people who once looked down on you now have to watch as you rise without needing their approval. They see you thriving, not out of spite, but out of purpose. You no longer carry the need to prove your value because you've already proven it to yourself. They can feel it in your silence, the unspoken reminder that they no longer have access to your emotions, your vulnerability, or your life. You've built walls not out of bitterness, but out of boundaries. You can stand in the same room as them, and their presence no longer stirs anger, it only reminds you of how far you've come. There's something powerful about smiling at the people who once hurt you, not because you've forgotten, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed their validation. You can look them in the eye and feel nothing but calm detachment. They might search your face for traces of pain or resentment, hoping to see the same broken person they left behind, but what they see instead is peace, quiet, unshakable, and untouchable. That's the kind of revenge that cuts deepest, not through cruelty, but through indifference. It shows them that they no longer have the power to affect you, that their actions no longer define the rhythm of your life. You begin to realize that revenge doesn't have to be cruel. It can be dignified, graceful, and silent. It's not about watching them suffer, it's about watching yourself heal. The greatest satisfaction comes not from seeing them fall, but from seeing yourself rise without needing to destroy them in the process. You learn that peace is not weakness, it's mastery. It's the ability to carry your scars without letting them turn into weapons. It's the understanding that forgiveness doesn't mean they were right, it means you refuse to let them live rent-free in your mind. The more you grow, the less their actions matter. You begin to find happiness in things that have nothing to do with them, your work, your passions, your sense of purpose. You find joy in your own accomplishments, peace in your solitude, and strength in your independence. Each day you choose not to look back is a victory. Every moment you focus on your own journey instead of their regret is an act of power. Your calm becomes your armor, your silence your statement, your success your revenge. Sometimes they will try to come back, disguised as remorse. They'll talk about the past as if it never happened, hoping your kindness will erase their guilt. But you no longer need to engage in their narrative. You've learned the difference between forgiveness and access. You can forgive them quietly, in your heart, without ever letting them close enough to hurt you again. That's what calm revenge looks like, not hatred, not bitterness, but distance filled with peace. You've let go of the need for closure because your life itself has become the closure they can never escape. They start to see the difference in you. The same confidence they once called arrogance now commands respect. The independence they mocked now makes them feel small. The silence they once mistook for weakness now feels like authority. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard anymore, your presence speaks louder than anything they could say. You've become the living embodiment of everything they didn't believe you could be. And that realization stings more than any insult, any confrontation, any revenge ever could. Calm revenge isn't about changing their hearts, it's about changing your own. It's about no longer letting pain control your actions. It's about finding freedom in letting go of what you can't change and peace in knowing that you survived what was meant to destroy you. You begin to move differently, think differently, live differently. You make choices based on what brings you joy, not on what will make them regret. The version of you that once needed to be seen has evolved into someone who doesn't care who's watching. You walk through life with the quiet assurance that the universe has already balanced what needed to be balanced. And that's the ultimate power of calm revenge, it restores you. It turns your pain into purpose, your silence into strength, and your past into proof that you can rise above anything. You no longer chase justice through their acknowledgement because you've